There's really not great recidivism data on that either. How well are they working?
Before we do this, we need to find out. Look, I believe in justice. I believe in treating everybody fairly. But there are people out there, I don't know why, if I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask. They're not mixed up. They're not confused. They're not sick. It's not that their mama or daddy didn't love them or not enough. They just hurt other people, and they take other people's stuff, and we have to separate them from society. And the director let 30,000 of these folks go and can't tell me today how many have come back. I just find it takes my breath away.
Hello, patriots, and welcome to Signal 76. Today we're diving deep into an issue that strikes at the very heart of our nation's safety and our government's accountability. We're exposing the shocking truths behind policies like the First Step Act and how out-of-touch bureaucrats are gambling with American lives. We're not just going to lay out the problems. We're going to talk about how we, the true guardians of this republic, can and must fight back to defend our traditional principles of justice and order. Now, before we rip the Band-Aid off this festering wound, I need you to do your part. If you believe in a strong, secure America, if you believe in holding the powerful accountable, then hit that subscribe button for Signal 76 right now. Smash that like button so this truth can spread like wildfire, and drop a comment below with your thoughts as we go. And trust me, you're going to want to watch this entire video until the very end, because the details we're about to uncover are critical for every single patriot who cares about the future of our communities.
So yeah, I believe Senator Kennedy still has a first-round opportunity, and I understand Senators Booker and Ossoff would like a second-round opportunity. Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you again, Senator.
I'm a big fan. Director Peters, you're the director of the Bureau of Prisons, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
You used to run the correction system in Oregon, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Oregon legalized drugs, is that right?
That's correct.
Oregon's about to reverse that, is that correct?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the policy proposed to reverse that.
Oh, you just ignored Oregon?
Oregon still has a very special place in my heart, sir.
Okay. You haven't read any of the articles about the reversal?
I haven't, Senator.
You don't know anything about it?
Correct, sir.
Okay, wow. You're in charge of implementing the First Step Act, Director?
That's correct.
How many criminals have you released under the First Step Act?
So First Step Act for the overall release since the initiation of the First Step Act is, I have that exact number in front of me.
You don't know off the top of your head?
Sorry, Senator. So 70% of those that were released, we have about 30,000 individuals that have been released since the passage of the First Step Act.
All right, so you've released 30,000 criminals under the First Step Act. Okay? And how many of them, before you released them, did you contact any of their victims to say we're about to let this guy out?
Senator, it's my understanding that that notification happens through the U.S. Attorney's Office, but I will check into that and get back to you.
You don't know?
Senator, I don't.
Have you followed up with the U.S. attorneys to say, do you have a system to say, hey, we're about to let this guy out? Would we want to be sure the victim's contacted?
As a former victim's advocate, I share that value, that victim notification should happen. I'll check on the process.
But you don't know if it's happening?
That's correct, Senator.
Wow. Okay, of the 30,000 criminals you let free, how many of them have come back? Have committed a crime again, hurt somebody else?
So that number is one that we're still looking at as it relates to the recidivism rate for those that were released on the First Step Act.
You don't have any idea?
No, Senator.
You don't have anybody at the Bureau that can count?
I do not have that number in front of me today.
So let me get this straight. The First Step Act was passed in 2018. This is 2024, am I right so far?
That's correct.
That's 6 years. And in 6 years, you've let 30,000 criminals go, right?
That's correct.
And you don't have the slightest idea how many of them committed another crime and came back?
I don't have that number in front of me today,
And you
sir.
run the Bureau of Prisons?
That's correct.
And how many employees do you have?
About 40,000 employees.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. General, I know you got a lot to do, But could you give us a hand here? And let's find out whether the First Step Act worked. And how many, if we've released 30,000 criminals after 6 years, our director here doesn't know how many have committed another crime and come back? Can you help us?
Senator, I can certainly follow up on that issue. I will just say in terms of work we've done in the past, for example, on compassionate release and going to the Bureau of Prisons, this is before Director Peters was there, and asking them for data on compassionate release, because that was one of the issues that has come up.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I'm not talking about compassionate release.
No, I understand.
You know,
I'm
my
just saying-
colleagues said, we were told that it would save money and it would be in the interest of public safety to release criminals from prison. I didn't vote for it, but the majority rules. And so Congress did it. And Ms. Peters, Director Peters at the Bureau of Prisons, and her colleagues released 30,000 criminals, all of whom are there for a reason, okay? They didn't just go to prison for a free toaster. They were there for a reason. And so her department let them go, and after 6 years, we don't have the slightest idea. Not a single one of the 40,000 of her employees know how many have committed a second crime and come back. So how the hell are we supposed to figure out whether it worked?
Senator,
Your people ought to hide their head in a bag, Director. That you can't come here in front of this Congress and answer that question. I'm sorry, I interrupted you with my speech.
No, that's okay. I was just going to, my bottom line point on it was, I've often looked to those questions on things like compassionate release and other programs. And one of the challenges we found is the department just doesn't have good data on that. Halfway houses. Congress is spending about $500 million a year on halfway houses. There's really not great recidivism data on that either. How well are they working?
Before we do this, we need to find out. Look, I believe in justice. I believe in treating everybody fairly. But there are people out there, I don't know why, if I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask. They're not mixed up. They're not confused. They're not sick. It's not that their mama or daddy didn't love them or not enough. They just hurt other people, and they take other people's stuff, and we have to separate them from society. And the director let 30,000 of these folks go and can't tell me today how many have come back. I just find it takes my breath away. With 40,000 people. How many of your 40,000 people are actually coming to work or are still working from home, Director?
The supermajority of our employees come to work every day because we're running 24/7
What percentage are coming to work every day?
The percentage is quite high. I don't have the exact
You
number.
don't know?
But
Well, maybe there's your problem.
the supermajority of our individuals come to
If
work
they're not coming
at
to
our
work, they
institutions.
can't give us the answer. I've gone over. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. This is why people hate government and don't trust government.
So I'd like to respond concerning the Grassley-Durbin First Step Act signed into law by President
I
Donald
thought you
Trump.
might have a response.
By President Donald Trump. I almost want to repeat that because this notion that it's soft on crime, I don't consider Chuck Grassley soft on crime. I don't consider Donald Trump soft on crime. Let me tell you the numbers that we have. Some 30,000 released. The recidivism rate for people released under the First Step Act is 12.4%. 7 out of every 8 individuals released under the law have not been rearrested or charged with a new crime. By comparison, DOJ estimates that in the decade before the First Step Act was passed, 43% of the people formerly incarcerated in BOP were rearrested within 3 years of their release. Is the First Step Act working? I would submit it is.
Would you yield for a question, Mr. Chair?
When I finish.
I'm sorry.
The point,
Excuse me for interrupting.
The point I'm making is we decided with the Trump administration and Senator Grassley's leadership that we were going to take a different approach to releasing people from prison. We would give them an opportunity to be trained, educated, skilled, in many ways more prepared for release, because 80%, I believe, in the system are going to be released someday. We don't want to commit another crime or create another victim. I would submit this is a success. Don't put your head in a bag, or whatever Senator suggested. Stand up tall and try to make it better, and I'm ready to do that. But the First Step Act was a constructive reform of the penal system, and I think it was a good idea, and stand by it. I'll submit to your question.
Thank you. And I appreciate, as usual, Dick, you made good points. Here's my point. I didn't vote for the First Step Act because I was afraid this was going to happen. And what I hear you saying is that of the 30,000 that the director released, over 3,000 committed another crime and are back. Here's my question. How come you know that and she doesn't?
Because she's probably looking
And the
for
40,000 people at Bureau of Prisons who are supposed to give us this information don't know.
Well, I'd like to say, in all fairness, she's under oath, and I think when you ask for numbers, she wants to make sure she tells you a number she can live with. I have this information. I think it's probably close to being 100% accurate, but I wouldn't say under oath it is. So I think give her a fair opportunity to respond. I mean, it just might not be the type of thing that comes rolling
you're
off
not
the tongue.
it's not your job, and I appreciate the information, and I'd like to see the study that shows that. I just don't understand why the director has no idea.
Well,
She didn't say she was uncertain and she wanted to go back and check. She said, I don't know. And I just find that extraordinary.
I'm assuming since she's under oath, it's an honest answer. We have two other individuals who are seeking a second round. I believe Senator Booker is first.
I hate to distract you from my questions, but I just want.
We recently witnessed a stunning display in the Senate, a so-called oversight hearing that should send chills down your spine. We had the director of the Bureau of Prisons, Director Peters, on the hot seat, questioned by stalwarts like Senator Kennedy. And what did we learn? We learned that under the guise of reform through the First Step Act, approximately 30,000, yes, 30,000 individuals have been released from federal custody. Now, any thinking American has to ask, who are these individuals and where are they now? Senator Kennedy, doing the job the mainstream media refuses to do, pressed Director Peters on a crucial point. Were the victims of these crimes even contacted before these releases? The answer was a bureaucratic shuffle, a typical that's handled by another office cop-out. Think about that. The people who suffered, the families torn apart, potentially left in the dark while the perpetrators of their pain walk free. Is this justice? Or is this a betrayal of the very people our government is sworn to protect? But it gets worse, folks. When Senator Kennedy demanded to know how many of these 30,000 released individuals have gone on to commit new crimes, the recidivism rate, as they call it, the director, the head of 40,000 employees, claimed she didn't have that data readily available. Unbelievable. She doesn't know. How can you manage a system of this magnitude, a system that directly impacts public safety, and not have the most critical data at your fingertips? It's either gross incompetence or willful ignorance. And frankly, neither is acceptable when American lives are on the line. Then you have Senator Durbin trying to run cover, throwing out a figure of 12.4% recidivism for those released under the First Step Act. Try to spin it as a success by comparing it to a supposed 43% rate from years ago. Let's be clear, 12.4% of 30,000 is still nearly 3,700 new crimes. Are those victims acceptable losses to them? Are those families just collateral damage in their social experiment? And Durbin's excuse for the director's ignorance? He suggested she might be hesitant to provide a number without being certain under oath. That's not an excuse. That's an admission of unpreparedness at the highest levels. This isn't about just numbers. It's about a mindset. A mindset in Washington that too often prioritizes the comfort of criminals over the safety of our communities and the rights of victims. They dress it up in fancy language like reform and second chances, but what about the first chance for law-abiding citizens to live without fear? What about their right to safety and security? We at Signal 76 believe in true justice. We believe in accountability. We believe that the primary role of our government is to protect its citizens. This hearing was a glaring example of how far some have strayed from that fundamental duty. They are releasing tens of thousands back onto our streets, and the very people in charge can't even tell us, or won't tell us, the full consequences. This is where you come in, patriots. We cannot let this stand. We need to be loud. We need to demand transparency. We need to support leaders who aren't afraid to ask the tough questions, like Senator Kennedy did. We need to challenge those who offer excuses instead of answers. The safety of our neighborhoods, the sanctity of our homes, the very fabric of our society is at stake. This isn't a game. The First Step Act, and the way it's being implemented and defended with a shocking lack of transparency, is a clear and present danger. It's time to make our voices heard. It's time to demand that our leaders put victims first and ensure that reform doesn't mean revolving door justice. We need to ensure that those in charge are not just hesitant to give answers, but are fully prepared and accountable for every decision they make that impacts our lives. This is a fight for the soul of America, a fight to preserve the order and safety that allows freedom to truly flourish. Don't let them tell you this is progress. This is a dereliction of duty, and it's time we called it what it is. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay active. This is Signal 76, signing off, but the fight continues. Make sure you're subscribed, share this video with every patriot you know, and let's light up the comments with your resolve. We will not be silenced, and we will not stand idly by while our country's core principles are eroded.